Well, good evening and welcome back to Vine Street Studios and the Charlie and Peter Show. So this is episode 3, and just to reflect for a minute or two on last week's show, where Peter went into a huge amount of detail on tags, which would be extremely useful moving forward to anybody who wants to go looking for a car, and that way you can make sure that the car is actually what the seller states that it is. So we're going to be expanding on the topic of tags and talking about body types and styles and add-ons and headlamps and everything that makes a difference between a 67 and a 69 Camaro. And we'll be talking again about what to look for. So just before we do that, I think we'll head over to Peter's garage once again and see what he's up to. So let's go over there right now. Okay, Peter, so we spoke about tags last week. Mm-hmm. Is there a tag on this engine?
There is, but it's stamped on the block here, which we can talk about that when we get into the engine and transmission stampings. The actual tag that we spoke about last year that we'll touch briefly on Sunday a little bit again, that's attached to the body. Okay, all right. Yeah, because it's one of these things like the newbie looking for the vehicle goes into somebody's barn and there's a motor there, and he goes, okay, let's see if I can find some tags. Yes, and it's actually, there's a stamp on the front pad, there's casting numbers with dates on it, so you can distinguish whether it's in numbers matching, if it's date coded correctly with the car build date, all that stuff there. All Great. That fun stuff. Great stuff. Well, good evening, Peter.
Hi, Charlie. How are you?
Nice Great. To see you. Nice to see you again.
How are things?
Yeah, pretty good. That was a quick visit we had the other night to get that footage. And, considering COVID, we took all the appropriate steps for safety. We were both wearing masks, and that's why we both sounded muffled, not as if we speak like that all the time.
No, you're right. It's unfortunate and fortunate. So it was unfortunate we have to wear the mask, but fortunate because of the circumstances nowadays, we have to take care of ourselves and be safe as well.
Yeah, that's true. And, I think in the coming weeks, we'll be attempting more on-site footage just to bring added value to the show. As you pointed out, rightly so, that, there's a tremendous amount of detail being conveyed here, but actually seeing it on a vehicle really sets the case for the individual to go fully handed, let's say, in search of a car and knowing what he's getting himself into and verifying whether it's a real car or not.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, Charlie. Absolutely. When we're trying to break things down and you finally find your car and you know what you're looking for, there's a lot of good information. Like I said, it can be overwhelming, but again, it's there's information available out there that'll help you justify the purchase.
Yeah, and just doing a little bit of research, took some notes. The first generation was the golden age of muscle cars in North America, and you know this. And the Camaro was an instant hit. And it stood the test of time over the years, so much so that between those years, 67 and 69, they made, I think it was over 800,000 vehicles. That's an incredible number of cars for a particular type, especially in North American manufacturers where they change every year.
Right. And it was, like I said, from 67 to 69, there was a huge market for it. People went crazy for the car. It was a novelty, and it was really a really nice looking car back then too. So, and a lot of good options available on it. And you know what? They performed very well on the street and on the track.
Yeah, Mustang chasers, and talking about styling. Go back to the sketch again. Now, it's interesting that the proportions of the front end to the rear end bear some similarity to the Mustang, and I think that was deliberate by the designers at the
Mhm.
time. But it certainly was a much more appealing looking car than the Mustang.
I'm sure they when they did design the Camaro, they took the Mustang into consideration because of the performance racing that they were doing on the track and on the road courses. So I'm sure they looked at all the options that were available to them, and obviously might have utilized some of the stuff on the actual Camaro as well.
Yeah, and as we said, there was changes, but sometimes it was just subtle changes. You know,
Mhm.
a rounding of the body sides or a more defined crease line, adding headlights, different type of exhaust, or badges and striping. You know, that really appealed to a large number of people.
Yep, and it's funny you say that because it goes back to what we say. The options on the cars were overwhelming, and you could get hideaway lights, you could get open headlights, you could get SS, RS, base car, deluxe interior, standard interior, houndstooth interior. It was actually for the time it was very good.
And you know, for the most part, uh, these cars, of course, were a stick drive, but there were some that were automatic.
Hmm. So
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to ask what the impression was with the automatics, and in terms of performance, what was the difference?
Well, you know, obviously they try to cater to both consumer with the automatics. The automatics back in '67 to '69 were available with the two-speed power glide was available with the 350 hydromatic and the turbo 400, which was the most common on the high horsepower motors. The
Hmm.
automatics they perform very well, especially with the 400s on the drag track. A lot of people like it. They're a little bit more consistent with the timing when you're running on the track. Standard was obviously and even in today's time, everybody looks for a stick. You know, to buy an automatic, they're still great cars, but the most popular is a standard transmission. You get the feel and you get to drive the car and be all in one with it.
Yeah, and you know, the aluminum or aluminium, whatever way you want to say it, uh, engine block, it obviously made a difference. But and one of the differences was a lighter front end.
So the BMW, uh, get confused there
Both the
sometimes.
tongue, yeah.
I know, eh? Camaro, when they came out, they had a couple of models that they used with aluminum setup in the engine compartment. One was the very sought after the ZL1, only made 69. It was a full 427 aluminum block, aluminum head engine. That was the king of all kings. And then they did have the L89 with the aluminum head as well. Uh, Great for power to weight distribution. But you know they came with their own. They're a little bit more finickier than a cast iron head. They did have some issues with cracking, overheating, very critical. But other than that, they were phenomenal engines. And yeah, you know what? They even though they were aluminum setups, whether it was a cylinder head or complete aluminum, the car still performed outstanding.
And why would they only make 69?
Because it was a limited production, and I guess they wanted to keep the exclusivity there too as well. And a lot of the cars that the ZL1s that were purchased, they were bought for drag racing, and again did very well at the track back in the day.
Um, so they, generally speaking, they are noisy and hot.
Yeah,
No air conditioning, right?
to say the least. Yeah, no, yep. They were available. So they were available with air conditioning, but a lot of the muscle cars, like the high horsepower ones, there was the air conditioning was an option deleted. Yeah.
So do you see many in your travels that have got air conditioning?
You see them like you know even the big block cars, the 396 is a little bit lower horsepower, the 350 horse and the SSs were available with air conditioning, the 350s were available with air conditioning. So the option was there, but anybody that purchased like an L78 or the L72 or the L, you know, those cars there were they didn't put air conditioning. They were made for one reason, that's to race.
Yeah. I can't imagine it on a day when it's 90 degrees or 100 degrees out there.
Mhm.
That's why you only drive it at night, Peter.
Exactly, and
Right.
and once or twice a week.
Yeah. Um, so when I was in your shop, I noticed this sign, motion performance,
Oh yeah.
right? So um, I think you told me that your car was originally sold by Baldwin. Is that right?
Yeah, from the information, the data I have on the car, it was originally sold out of Baldwin. Motion was a performance shop that back in the '60s teamed up with Baldwin dealership, and Joel Rosen, who was the owner of it, started fabricating these cars, and they were adding different accessories to the cars. When you purchased a brand new car, if you wanted, you could do a complete engine 427 swap with and a lot of modifications, which became the Baldwin Motion cars, which today they could range anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 based on the car. But yeah, I mean, car was purchased. It wasn't a Baldwin Motion car, but there was a lot of accessories that were added from what I know on the car, which were existing when I purchased the car. And yeah, it's Baldwin Motion was a big part of history when it comes to drag racing as well.
So Baldwin in Norwood,
Baldwin was based out of Long Island.
Long Island. Oh,
Mhm.
wow. So I guess that was a kind of high demand area for muscle cars.
Yeah, New York,
Yeah.
obviously, New York, all those areas there were very high traffic area for muscle cars.
Hmm. So let's say I'm looking for a 67
Hmm.
and I find one and I notice that it's got the quarter glass,
Right.
um, and the guy says it's a 67, but I'm not too sure about this, but I'm sure that the exhaust pipe came straight out the back. So what does that tell you?
Well, if it's straight out the back for a '67, it's incorrect. So maybe the person that restored the car or changed it kind of liked that look, but in actual fact, in '67 and '68, the tailpipes were drop downs behind the rear wheel.
Yeah, so
So,
that
so
opens up a whole kettle of fish of questions then.
yeah, and again, it just boils down to the originality. So you know what, the car could be all original, could be a numbers matching car, and somebody just had a vision of having the tailpipes come out the back, but it doesn't. It doesn't take anything away from the car because that's easily changed. You can easily change that and revert back to the original setup. But I mean, it's when you see that, obviously you're going to know that the exhaust is not original.
Yeah, and the guy had said, I saw the notes that he made, that when he was looking in the engine compartment, there was these chalk marks on the engine block, and he didn't know, and the guy who was selling it didn't know what they were, but they obviously had some meaning.
Right, and although there are markings, a lot of the stuff has never been 100% documented on why they were on there or for what reason or. But a lot of the stuff that on my research, some of them were like quality checks. I know on the firewalls they used to use some different stampings on the firewall for quality checks. I know that there was some markings on the tie rods and the suspension, but nothing really concrete that identifies that yeah, it was done on every single car. It was hit and miss. It could have been based on the guy that's assembling the car during back in the day. That it was his thing of marking that everything was completed and tightened properly. It's hard to say, but
Yeah,
I have seen cars with actual original cars that have markings on them, but nothing's consistent.
yeah. So of course they didn't have ISO 9000 in those days.
No, no, they didn't. No, obviously not.
So what about seat belts? Now I know that I had I think I told you, uh, a 1969 uh, Chevy, and it had uh, waist belts, safety straps. What about the shoulder straps? Are they not a requirement from insurance?
Back in the day, they obviously weren't. It was an option on some of the vehicles where you could actually order a shoulder strap when you were ordering the car. The majority did come with the lap belt. That was the standard back then and the safety requirements. But the shoulder strap was an option. It was available, but you need to understand, Charlie, the shoulder straps are not like the shoulder straps today, where they were fixed shoulder straps. So they had your lap belt had a buckle, and then your seat and your shoulder strap had a buckle. But
Mm.
they were fixed on both ends, and other than the lap belt was retractable, but the actual the shoulder strap was not, and it was. You tighten it up and there's no movement. It's not like today where you can actually lean forward and it's got a ratcheting mechanism and it basically locks on inertia.
Mm. Now, you spoke about numbers matching and the importance of that. Now,
Mhm.
I think that would take us back into the tags
Okay.
and the information that you were going to convey to us about the tags and what to look for when you're out searching for a car. And I think that's one of your topics this week that you wanted to expand on.
Yeah, exactly. And expanding is correct, Charlie. We kind of did a little overview last week on it. But, I think in some episodes, I'd like to really break down because that's a lot of good information for people that are looking to buy and are chasing a numbers matching type vehicle or something with that the options were available on the trim tag. So, I think based on the fact that you had let's use the concept that Charlie, you found a '67 and you were actually going to see the car and you want to know um, how important the trim tag is and what to look for. I'll give you a quick rundown on the '67 trim tag in a little bit more in depth and how it worked. So that way, anybody that's watching, again, this information is available all over the web and stuff, but that you can look at. But just to touch quickly, I'll just focus a little bit on the board again here. So the bottom one here, which is this particular one here, that's your '67 trim tag. So when you're looking at the trim tag on a '67, that's the first thing you should go on the vehicle when you're inspecting it. Have a look at the trim tag. Make sure that the rivets are properly installed, which we can talk about that at a later date when I actually have a vehicle in front of me. But a lot of the good information on the '67s, which you can break down right down to all the options. So, for example, in the top corner here is the build date of the car. So this one particular vehicle here is a February. The D stands for the fourth week of February was the build date of the car. Across here on the top, there's an E. That's an interior trim code for the color. Remember, there's only one thing you take note of on Los Angeles car. That code there may have a number after it. It's not necessarily the same information as what it is on a Norwood built car. This on a Los Angeles car, this number here will mean that it is the work order or a number for tracking on the Van Nuys cars. Further down here, you have the style trim, so it shows you that it was a '67. The 12437 indicates a sport coupe with standard interior. This line here where it says Norwood. Norwood was one of the plants where the BMW, where the Camaros were built. Norwood, Ohio. The number right after that is not a particular number. Does not need to match your VIN number. This is an assembly line number. I guess obviously a tracking number when they're actually building the car. Over here you see a TR. That is your trim or your interior. 760 on this particular tag indicates standard black interior, which the interiors were available in multi different, like deluxe and standard interior. Over here it says body and paint. The body and paint is actually the code of the actual body. If there's a 1 or a 2 beside the A on this particular trim tag is a black car. The 1 would indicate a white vinyl roof and a 2 a black, or either it could be either one. So a number after that would indicate that the car had a vinyl roof. Over here is E is an option, option 1, which is tinted glass. So the E over in this particular line is a tinted glass. That's option 1. Option 2 is basically your 4-speed transmission with a console, rear antenna, and rear speaker. On option 3, which is this one here, this indicates a Rally Sport with the exterior chrome trim. So when you got a Rally Sport, a lot of the time with the package you got, there was an exterior trim on the bottom of the doors in the rocker that was unique to the RS. The bottom left corner here, that's option 4. That code L it signifies a Z28. So the L is Z28. If it was a P, it would normally mean a L46 350 engine. So that would be would be a P here. There's other options that were available. I think there was an N for big block cars and a K. So there's other options, but these numbers in front of here, these were the different options. So option 1, option 2 was the first digit. Option 3 plus your options, the code for your options. Option 4 was your engine designation. So L, like I said, would be the Z28302. And group 5, this one here was the actual, this particular model had the bumper guards on it. So just on this trim tag alone, you can bring up a lot of information on that car, and you can decipher whether or not the car is matching to what you're actually looking at it when you're checking the car out.
So, wow. So on the car, now you pointed out some numbers to me on the engine block and the transmission.
Mm-hmm.
So all those tags that you just showed there, would some of them show up and match what was on or what is on your car?
The actual body tag does not have any information other than the engine displacement. The body tag does not tell you the VIN number of the block or the build date of the block or the transmission or anything like that. The tag does not tell you that. It tells you the date of when the car was built. But in order to find out if the number's matching, there's a lot of areas that you would look on a vehicle over and above the trim tag. The trim tag is basically your information on how that car was built in 67. I'm just going to show you a little difference, Charlie, on the 68 tag, if you got a second.
Okay.
So when you go to the 68 tag, which is the one above it, if you look at the amount of data that's on the 67 compared to the 68, 68 was more of a unique year. They did not have any options available other than the color code. The color code of the car, which was UU. This particular paint code would be a Le Mans blue, and it would have the standard 711 interior, which was black standard interior. It tells you the year. It tells you the body type, the plant it was built on, and that's it. So if you look at it, the two differences, it was very unique, and I don't know why General Motors went away from all this information on the trim tag. But if you notice on it, there's a lot less information. If you look a little bit further up, I also have a sample of the 69. Again, 69, better than 68, but not as good as 67. So in the top corner, again, it tells you the year of the car. It gives you the body type, the plant, the production number, the trim, interior trim, again, is 711 standard interior, 72 being in a Hugger orange paint, 12D, which is your build date. 12 would be the 5th. This would be the 4th week of December. And X77 signifies that it was a base Camaro with a Z28 package. And the D80 here, obviously, if it's on the trim tag, it signifies that it was a spoiler car. So the D80 will mean that it was a spoiler car, front and back. But other than that, it doesn't give you any information about Rally Sport, anything like that. If you're looking for a Rally Sport in a 69, typically this X77 would be an X33. X33 was a style trim that incorporated possibilities of an RS and also the chrome accessories on the outside. So your drip moldings, the lower valance color, it's all the chrome that was available on the X33 may not have been on the X77.
So would you suggest to any potential buyer that they compile a list for a particular model that they might have found and then go back in there and start checking it?
Right. So if you're buying a 67, what I would do is I would do the research on the trim tag or have availability information about the trim tag. So if you're looking at an ad and the excuse me the it's advertised as a rally sport package, then you would be looking at option 3, which would indicate if it was a rally sport. So if it's a rally sport, it would have either with the style trim, it would be KL on there. So you're gonna have to know these numbers before you go in there. And you have to understand that nobody remembers all the numbers and all the tags and all the different options. There was so many. So it's very good that when you're looking at an ad and the guy says, you know what, it's an original RSSS 350 car. So you should know what that trim tag should stay. So on the bottom there, if I'm not mistaken, it should be a 4P. That would indicate a 350 car. So when you start getting all this, you're looking at the ad and you're compiling all this information and you want to go see it, on a 67, the trim tag is the best place to start.
I see. Yeah, it's sort of go there armed, let's say, and then start doing a comparison of what's on the car
Right.
and a checklist.
And it's a good point, Charlie, because at the end of the day, if you're going to spend the money and you're buying something that's restored, or you're going to want to make sure that you do a little bit of homework on it, because at the end of the day, if you're buying that car, it's numbers matching, or and it is what it is, and it's restored, you're going to be paying a dollar for it. So you just want to make sure that you're up to speed with what you're actually getting.
And so just to go back to changes in the cars, and there was some distinct enhancements with the body, changing the lines of it, and as I said, adding in headlamps. And you touched on the headlamps briefly, maybe, and that the black rear end, all these extras, badges and striping. You maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, again, with like, let's talk a little bit about the blacked out tail pan. The blacked out tail pan usually came on the big block cars. So except for specific colors, but that was based on the option code when you ordered it. But a lot of the big blocks came with a blacked out tail pan. So if you go see a car and he's advertised as it, listen, at the end of the day, anybody can paint the tail pan black. It's just a matter of understanding based on the options. If that car was a big block car and it was a specific color that accommodated for that tail pan, like that color, and you need to know that. And then, like I said, the 67, you'll be able to tell that.
I see. So there's lots of choices, and I guess it depends on what the buyer is looking for. Are you looking for a 67 base model, or are you looking for a 69 with all the bells and whistles on it?
Yeah. And you talked about the headlights, which is good as well. All 67, all first generation Camaros came with a Rally Sport package. Rally Sport package came with the hideaway headlights. So the actual headlights, whether they were electric in 67 or vacuum operated in the other years, they basically hid the headlights when the lights were off.
And
When
were
you
they horizontal?
Horizontal, yeah,
Yeah.
horizontal doors, and they would go behind the grill and then open up and they cover the headlight. Most of them they were concealed. 69 had the only one had the kind of little windows in it, so you could actually see the headlight behind it.
Yeah.
But the 67 and 68 were actually very unique, where it closed the front. Actually, it's a very sharp looking when it's like that. Very nice car, and they're very sought after. The RS package on all three models or all 3 years. There were, I mean, obviously, if you have an RS package over a bug eye, what they call bug eyes, which is an open headlight car,
Yeah.
usually the RS is a little bit more money.
Wow. Well, how interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do we have planned for the next week? What's the topics that they're going to be discussing?
You know what? I think what we discussed the trim tags. I hope I gave you a little bit of information, or I gave you a little bit of help with understanding about them. But like again, there's a lot of information, overwhelming. Obviously, maybe next week, Charlie. Maybe I'll have one of my cars back in the garage, and we can actually start looking at some of the areas to look for when you're chasing that numbers matching car, the different areas to look, what to look for, in order to ensure that you have an idea of what areas and understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, and just talking about that, looking at a car, what about brake types, exhaust, uh, all these mechanical components that, well, you might not see until you take a wheel off,
Mhm.
that type of stuff. Uh,
And those are things that when we get into the garage, Charlie, I have some stuff set up there that we can actually look at, and we can talk a little bit about the braking systems. They were both available with their obviously the base cars were drum front and rear. Then they came with on the disc brakes came with 4 piston calipers on some of the bigger performance cars. They came with a single piston caliper in '69. They came with a four-wheel disc in '69 too as well, which was an option, actually a very rare option. So the braking systems were, power brakes, standard brakes, all that stuff there was all option. And again, when you're looking, I'll give you a little bit of idea what to look for in the brakes. A lot of vehicles had the two-piece rotors on the car, which separates the rotor from the hub. Sometimes you're purchasing the car, you'll see that there's a rotor on the car that's one piece. Those are nothing wrong with them, but obviously not an original rotor. Those could be a reproduction or aftermarket.
mm.
So many things.
Yeah, so many things, so many topics, but we've got time, and on a weekly basis, we can spend a fair amount of time discussing a number of topics each week, that will provide a treasure trove of information for the buyer going out there looking for a car.
Right. And visuals are always good when you're actually being able to see like where the locations are on certain thing, where the casting dates on the block is, on the cylinder head. Those things they're cast into the block when that block's produced in the foundry. So they actually put the dates in there, the casting numbers, there are multiple different casting numbers for different engine configurations. There's transmission stampings, there's differential stampings, there's build dates on, and all of them have dates. Again, which it takes a little bit of time, and you have to have access when you're inspecting a car that you're looking to purchase. It's obviously going to have a little bit of challenges if the car is on the ground, but if you have the option to put it up in the air, the locations where I'll show you where to look will definitely help you in trying to locate all those numbers that basically solidify the purchase.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's lots of components that have got numbers hidden below another component,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah. Well,
But
that's great. Go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
that's all good, Charlie. Those are nice. Like I said, they're all visuals. When you have something in front of you, like we talk about stuff and we try to analyze and give as much information as possible. But when you start looking at things, and we'll have some fun with it and looking at all the different areas of the first gen Camaro, I think
Mhm.
I don't think it'll be a lot more pleasant for the viewers.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, all being well and the weather cooperating, maybe we'll see your car coming home,
Mm-hmm.
and that sounds like a big adventure for everybody to see the real live car and then have a look inside and see what you've done to it and the story behind it all.
Yeah, that's one of the cars that I have in my possession right now. That was one of my full restoration vehicles.
Great. All right, so maybe we'll sign off now and thank everybody for dropping by. Please remember to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. That helps to encourage us. And thanks again, Peter, for a great amount of information on these cars. And look forward to seeing everybody next week at the same time, Sunday evening at 8 o'clock. And thanks very much for dropping by. Bye for now.
Thanks, Charlie. Take care of yourself. Stay safe.
You too, Peter. Bye now.
Take care.